When a friend of mine suggested professional hockey player Riley Cote as a guest, I will admit I thought about it for a while before I connected with him. My last experience with hockey players was drinking with a group of people at the bars on Sansom Street in Philadelphia and required a few days recuperation time afterward. Plus, I had only ever seen Riley fight on the ice. One of the nicest people you will ever meet is what you get with Riley. Today, he opens up and gets very real about his days coming up as a hockey player from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, to the US through minors, majors, and coaching. Riley has taken those life lessons and moved on to more entrepreneurial endeavors, which he will be back on the Businessy podcast to talk more in depth about all that. But for now, let's talk about hockey. Hey everybody, I am your host Tatiana Ryan, and this is the Businessy podcast. Today I have with me Riley Cote from the Philadelphia Flyers, from the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, and he is now an entrepreneur also. Riley, you have done so much right now, and we've got so much to talk about because you are involved in so many different ways with hockey still, but you also have some other things going on.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. Now, you played 4 years with the Philadelphia Flyers. You coached Lehigh Valley Phantoms. You started your career in Canada. How did you know as a kid you wanted to be in hockey, doing what you did?
Honestly, as long as I can remember, I had the dream of playing in the NHL. Growing up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, we had an NHL team back in the day, which is now back in Winnipeg. But my parents had season tickets. I was a big fan, played pond hockey on the outdoor rinks, street hockey. I just loved it. You know, again, it's one of those things I just kind of envisioned it from a very young age that I was going to somehow find my way without even understanding the path or what I was even getting myself into. But yeah, it was just such a dream. It was almost like it was etched in my DNA in some way, shape, or form, but just grateful for the experience.
Now, you brought up playing pond hockey and street hockey as a kid. When you're a hockey kid, though, looking to go professional, like a lot of these hockey parents, you got to be up at crack of dawn out there testing, getting all the moves with the stick and everything. And then on top of it, you have to be on skates or on ice. So you take a lot of dedication to get to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like anything else in life. If you want to be good at something, it requires a ton of commitment and discipline and early mornings and sacrifice and reps. And, without really understanding that world when you're a kid, you're just doing something you love. So getting up early in the morning for practice and games doesn't seem like it's that crazy and that far out there, because you love it, right? And I think without being aware of, saying my dream or my overall purpose growing up, it was easy to do because I loved it. And I think that's, probably the key is finding something you love. It don't seem like it's work. But yeah, I mean, I think no matter what you do in life, if you want to get good at something, you want to improve, you just got to get the reps in. So it requires time. It requires obviously discipline and commitment.
When I sent the picture over to you, because your nickname, the Enforcer, the picture I picked out, you had two black eyes. How did you pick where you wanted to be in hockey? And that's a big part with what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I guess you could say the dream, the outcome shifted in a sense where I was realizing I wasn't as good as I thought I was. Growing up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, I'm a big fish in a small pond. I was one of the better kids for my age in the city, probably within the province. It wasn't until I was 16 years old and moved out of Manitoba to play in the Western Hockey Leagues, a junior hockey league, that I realized, holy shit, like I'm not as good as I thought I was. I was 16 years old playing against 18, 19, 20-year-olds and guys that were drafted to the NHL. So, there was still a lot of fighting back in juniors, but back in that day. And in that 4 years of junior hockey, I didn't fight more than 20 times. So I didn't really adopt the role of the enforcer in junior hockey. but I was competitive. I had fought a few times and did pretty well. But not being drafted and looking at the guys getting called up to the NHL, lots of goals, lots of penalty minutes, and there was still a role for fighting back in the day. It's kind of evolved out of the game now, but I just realized like this is what I had to do to get noticed, to to stick around and stay relevant, find an identity. There was obviously a very distinct identity with the enforcer, playing that role. But it was just one of those things. I just kind of had to accept it for what it was, and it was essentially my vehicle to live out my childhood dream. Had I been more skilled and been more of a offensive player, I probably would have chosen to attempt to make it and find that path of scoring goals and being more of an offensive role. But it was just one of those things. I had to shift my direction slightly or a lot. It's a pretty deep role because it's kind of a game within the game. But it was something that I just identified as being necessary to give myself a standing chance. Again, I was not drafted, so my foot wasn't in the door in any organization. So I was essentially on display, if you will. So I was trying to make a name for myself. I was trying to be physical, maybe a presence out there. But that being said, it was a challenge. It was something I wouldn't change for the world. But if I could have scored 50 goals a year and made $5-6 million a year, I would have chosen that. There's no question, because that was the dream growing up. You always think that you're going to be Wayne Gretzky, or you're going to be this clutch player, and but the world sometimes has different plans for you, as long as you're willing to shift and deal with the adversity, which I did. However, obviously it takes its toll. Fighting is not a natural thing for anybody. It takes its toll physically, emotionally, spiritually, and that was a lesson in itself, which pushed me into the space I'm in today. But that's probably for another day. But I'm just grateful for the experience, because I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about resilience and positive attitude, work ethic, obviously, but just staying true to my vision, to my goal, whatever that looks like, and just kind of keep persevering.
When you made the transition and you did get noticed and you came down from Canada to the United States, like, you were being bounced around between 3 or 4 different teams at one point, weren't you?
Yeah, so my first year pro, I landed up going to Toronto Maple Leafs training camp. I landed up signing with their minor league team in the American Hockey League, St. John's Maple Leafs, and then I landed up in the Central Hockey League for, I would say, 90% of that year in Memphis, Tennessee, where we landed up winning a championship. But that first year was, minor leagues to minor leagues, kind of up and down for a year. Interesting experience. Again, we won a championship. So as a team, and that experience, it was I would say on paper pretty good. However, I didn't want to be in the Central Hockey League. I mean, this place is a jungle. You talk about, not a shortage of guys to be fighting, and they're not small either. So, the next year was similar. I went to Columbus Blue Jackets training camp, and then, signed with Syracuse Crunch, which there was an American League team. And then I spent most of the time in the minor league teams in the East Coast Hockey League with the Dayton Bombers. So yeah, there was a lot of movement, a lot of moving around. Again, you realize, the business side of the sport, when you kind of observe it from the outside perspective of not being drafted and seeing the guys that get opportunities, the guys that get drafted, they're always giving these guys an extra shot. These guys they're finding ways to get these guys games, and they got priority. They got drafted. They're kind of in this pecking order that the organization creates, and here I am, just like a walk-on, essentially, a free agent signing that's, third, we would say fourth line player, fringe player. So I really had to do something special. I really had to get noticed, to stick around. That was just like the priority was just to stick around, let alone, moving my ass up. So that's why I was such a hard worker, and that was ingrained, in me at a really young age through my parents. Just, like, if I can remember 2 things from my childhood, it was work hard and have a good attitude, which I tried to carry throughout my life and my hockey career. And I think it served me well, because as a role player, you certainly have to show that you have a good attitude, whether you feel that way or not, you're not in the lineup, and you're getting scratched and this and that, you're not playing much. It's easy to get sour, and it's easy to to go south on it. So I think that was certainly a test of my resilience and character. However, it served me well, because you can't be a role player. You can't be the enforcer, the police officer, if you will, if you're a bad guy. If you got a bad attitude. So kind of take a lot of these learnings and insert them, and continue to focus on the things that will keep me around and get me noticed.
Well, being noticed, at one point you accumulated 280 penalty minutes from all of those fights. That made
Yeah.
you, I mean, is that a Guinness World Record or something?
No, believe it or not, it's not even close. I mean,
Really?
I mean, it's a substantial amount of penalty minutes for sure. But there was certainly guys in that era that were, maybe getting 100 more minutes. A lot of 10-minute misconducts and stuff like that. There was kind of some interesting ways to pad the penalty minutes, that I didn't exactly subscribe to. And that was kind of like waiting to the last 5-10 minutes of the game when the game's out of hand and go telling the ref to F off, or, go on the ice when you're not supposed to and get a 10-minute misconduct. And they used to count 10-minute misconducts in your penalty minutes. So that would pad the stats. But it was certainly, a lot of those, a good chunk of those 280 penalty minutes were fighting majors, and those are hard-earned minutes. It's 5 minutes for fighting, and I was fighting, 35 times a year. What those numbers don't show is how many fighting majors you have. And I was always like, my goal, normally like hockey players' goal per season would be to, like, to score a certain amount of goals and have a certain amount of points, right? Mine was to be in the top 3 in the league in fighting majors. That was kind of my goal. The penalty minutes was just a byproduct of the fight, so I wasn't so much concerned about those. Those were just kind of inherently part of it. But it was the fighting majors, because that's where the street credit is. So you can get all the 10-minute misconducts in the world and minor penalties in the world, but if you're not fighting and earning your stripes, if you will, guys will see right through that. You would kind of come across as an imposter, kind of one of those, what I would call a pretender. Kind of hiding behind the penalty minutes, but you're really backing it up and doing your job, the way you're supposed to be doing. So it wasn't an easy way to do it. It certainly wasn't. It wasn't fun at times when you're fighting guys way out of your weight class, guys that are got 30, 40 pounds on you and 5-6 inches on you. It's not exactly fun, right? Certainly welcoming the challenge is one thing, and being ready for it and being a stand-up guy, but you're fighting 35 times a year. You're gonna get your ass beat now and then, and you're gonna take your lumps. And that was just part of it. Early on in my pro career, I actually enjoyed the challenge. I actually, like, there was something really exciting about it, believe it or not. But as I did it year after year after year, and then finally got my first taste in the NHL, did that for a full year, exact same job in a different tax bracket. You wake up at the end of the season in the morning, and you're like, man, I got to do this all over again. I got to go prove myself again. I got to fight these guys again and again and again. It just wears on you. I mean, as you can imagine, it's an emotional roller coaster, jacking yourself up to essentially go to war, in a sense, right? Jacking yourself up to fight, and you versus the other guy in front of 20,000 people. There's a lot of emotions, as you can imagine, and then there's depending on how the fight goes, there's a lot of emotional ties to the result of the fight, right? I mean, highs and lows, and you're only as good as your last fight. But you got to go out there and do it again, right? I mean, even if you got your ass beat, I mean, there's games that got my ass beat, and I'm going out there and trying to fight the guy again. That's the same game, and just because it's a pride thing, right? Like, no one likes to lose, and you're letting your teammates down, or at least you think you are. You let yourself down, you let the fans down. So there's just a lot of emotional uncertainty with the job too, right? Because you're a fringe guy, and you're one punch away from being out of the lineup, or you're one injury away from not playing, and just an interesting dynamic. It certainly wasn't something that I grew up looking to do. It was something that I observed in junior hockey, the role, seeing how these guys operated, and realized how taxing it was. And then when I decided to take on the role, and get into it and actually live it, it was a different beast altogether. But again, I was so driven by my dream. I was so driven to find my way that I just didn't care. As much suffering that it induced, and uncertainty and uneasiness, it was just like it just felt necessary. Again, it was, you do some desperate, crazy things when you're trying to pursue something that you love, right? And you're trying to live out what you kind of set out to do, which in my world was, playing the NHL as long as I can remember. Like I envisioned it, just certainly not the way I landed up making it.
Let's bring up some of the fights that you have had. And as you were just saying, dealing with not only the team aspect of everything and letting your teammates down, but also the fans and the conundrum that comes with that. And sometimes the fans are going to say the worst things to you, but they don't know. They're not out there, like you're also out there fighting on a pair of skates too, on ice, while you have all these pads on and everything, which is great to help you, but your body is still going through all that anxiety also.
Yeah, you know what? You have to develop thick skin, right? You're in the business of sport, and then, as you move up, there's more and more fans. There's more and more people that pay, their hard-earned money to see games and see guys perform, and they don't really give a shit. Like, they want to see. They want to see. First of all, they want to see effort. They want to see heart. And they want to see wins, right? I mean, again, it's like they spend a lot of their hard-earned money to come to games, and and time. The last thing they want to see is for sure is a poor effort. You're going to lose games, you're going to lose fights. I think at the end of the day, all they care about is, at least if you show up. At least if you show up, you might get a clap. But if they sense that you're not showing up and you're not pouring your heart into it, they'll let you know, and you'll hear about it. But you can't get lost in people's opinions. I learned that a long time ago, and it was tough at first. You know what I mean? Growing up like a naive kid, like I actually cared what people think with thought when I grew up. You know what I mean? But then you realize, like, the more you're in the limelight, there's more and more opinions that will come directed at you, and you're kind of under the microscope, I guess, if you will. And you just got to realize that people are going to have their opinion, and they're going to be thinking a certain way depending on how a game goes or a fight goes, and you just got to kind of tune out the noise, right? There's so much noise, there's so much opinion, and I think if you get caught up in that, you certainly have no chance in being successful, because it's a distraction, right? I'm in the business of mindfulness, and distraction is what takes you away from the present moment, which takes you away from the dream and the priorities and what you need to be focusing on. So it's easy to get swallowed up in the Twitter messages and the Instagram shit, and a lot of people just hating on athletes and sports because they have nothing better to do. But it is what it is, and you're not going to stop it. So you should probably be good at generating thick skin and just to ignore it, because it's inevitable.
You played before all of the Twitter and all of the social media stuff and everything. What were your first thoughts when you came to Philadelphia, which is one of the roughest fan bases? They will let you know everything.
I was really excited, and I didn't know much about Philly outside of the obvious, right? I just didn't know how much it was ingrained in the culture, and I knew a little bit about the Broad Street Bullies and the essence of the old school Flyers. But I was excited because I was like, man, I'm gonna fit in, because this is like, this is kind of my style. I'm reckless, and I'm hardworking, and but it wasn't until I actually played and sensed the energy and sensed that drive of the fans and the passion of the fans that I really understand, how embedded hockey and Broad Street Bullies was into the culture of Philly, which I embraced. It kind of became, part of me, right? It was something that I had to fully embrace to be the best I could be. In my role, it was to learn about the Broad Street Bullies, it was to learn about the role more, it was like to be more fearless, because that's what they wanted to see. I remember, like, hearing fans just like on the bench, like all they expected was a fight or a hit, or like, go kill someone, what I mean? It like kind of fueled me, because I get it, like that's what, not that it was about the fight, it was about, but when you're putting yourself out there and you're putting your head on the line, it is about the heart, right? And it's like, and that was one of the things I could say I had for sure was heart. I wasn't the best fighter, I wasn't the biggest guy, I wasn't the toughest guy, but I was probably one of the most fearless guys that you'll find, and I was the guy that was certainly bringing the heart in every game and every practice and every time I showed up at the rink. I think that would be one of the things that I could hang my hat on and say with confidence that was probably what got me to the NHL and kept me around for 4 years. Because I almost to a fault where I was just I had embodied the role so much, and it became this almost like this in my mind, like a physical manifestation of a superhero of some sort, right? I mean, it was like I was embodying this role where I almost forgot to play hockey. Like I almost like stopped doing the skill work that I had done growing up, and the stick handling and all the stuff that I should have been doing to become a better hockey player. I was focusing that energy on becoming a better fighter or a tougher, harder puncher and a tougher opponent, and I guess it served its purpose in a sense because I did pretty well considering I'm undersized guy, but I also abandoned the very essence of the game I was playing, which was hockey, right? And it kind of like just got gobbled up by the role. That being said, I learned a lot about it all. I just learned a lot about the mind and the thinking and the drive and the heart. And I wouldn't change it for the world. There's a lot to learn in my journey, and I did a lot of things wrong. I would say one of the hardest workers, but I wasn't the smartest worker. And this is kind of the space I'm in now is being more of a intelligent worker, making life a little bit more easeful on yourself, a little more skillful, and not being so rigid with everything, and that's where I was at the time. That's all I knew. And I was just, riding the wave as long as I could with the tools that I had, which essentially, as I mentioned, hard work, positive attitude, and a ton of heart and resilience. And that's what I hung my hat on. And that was kind of my vehicle, if you will. I was fearless. I put my body out there probably too much, where I was banged up half the time. But again, it was part of the process. It was necessary to live out the dream.
Well, it wasn't all fights. In 2007, when you were with the Phantoms, they named you Man of the Year because of all your philanthropic outreaching to the community. And you have a huge heart. So it wasn't all just like, I'm going to beat the crap out of everybody. Right.
Yeah, I guess that was, yeah, right. I guess that was my on ice persona. That was the way that a lot of people viewed me, and how people thought I was off the ice. I was always I always have a big heart. I've always enjoyed giving back and going to hospitals and visiting kids and doing whatever I could, schools, reading books. I mean, I always thought it was part of the process. If you're in a position of, leadership, or you're in a position in the community that people respect, that your job is to always give back in some way, shape, or form. So I embraced that part of it. I enjoyed seeing people smile and connecting with them and talking to them about any questions they had. It was just you realize that, like, you're talking to a fan, and they love what you do, and and they wanted to learn more, and how much that means to them. So as long as I can remember, even going back to junior hockey, I love doing that stuff too. Just being in the community, being visible. It wasn't to pump my own ego. It was just I just felt like it was part of the job. Like, you're in a position you're in a position in the community that people know who you are, and you have some influence. So if you can make someone smile, if you can go to the hospital and give a little time to a child that's sick or suffering, and put a smile on their face, it's the art of giving, right? I mean, it's helping them, but it's also fulfilling spiritually, right? When you give, there is an energy that's cultivated from within that you can't get any which other way. And I realized that a long time ago, that the giving is a huge part of receiving, and you can't have it, but you can't have it without the giving piece. And Just embraced it. And I still do it. Just do it in a different way now. Almost to a fault, I almost feel like, geez, am I getting taken advantage here? I'm doing a lot of stuff for free, and I'm doing, but it's just like, I don't know, it's just kind of in my nature, and just knowing that the universe has got your back, and if you give and put yourself out there and do the right things and carry the right high vibration, that it generally comes back around. But you're not doing it with attachment, you're doing it without attachment, and just knowing that this is the way it goes, and everything will be okay. But it's always about being of service and always about giving back. It's the way I've kind of seen it and lived it.
After you retired in 2010, you went into coaching teams. How did you have to change your mindset from being that player to being in charge of those players?
It's actually pretty simple, honestly. When I first made the decision to retire, there was a huge weight off my shoulders and back, because again, I made the decision to retire from playing, which meant that I made the decision to retire from fighting, which, as I kind of alluded to earlier, was very emotionally and spiritually taxing. You're in this chronic state of anxiety, chronic state of fight or flight, and all of a sudden I felt like that dissipated instantly. I could take a deep breath and be like, oh, I'm not going to war tomorrow. That being said, I also kind of put a period on my childhood dream, my hockey playing career. But that being said, I transitioned on the other side of the fence to now coaching, where I was still involved in the game, similar routine, right? Getting up early, being the first guy at the rink, and getting my workout in, and now I'm just teaching and being on the other side of the fence. I think the only thing I could really identify with was challenging was just like letting go of some of the emotion attached to the game when you're sitting on the bench. And then, there's a guy getting taken advantage of, and there's like, one of the opposing team's tough guys kind of flexing. Probably a lot of times early on, I'd fought in the guy back in the day, so I knew him personally, and he's flexing and he's, puffing his chest out, and I would, kind of lose my shit at times, and think I'm still playing and like I actually could go out there and do something about it, but you're standing there in a suit and you really can't do nothing. And so I almost have to learn to just kind of like save that energy to teach and save that energy to focus it elsewhere, instead of getting so wrapped up in the opponent and so wrapped up in the refereeing. But other than that, I actually really enjoyed the transition, because I realized I really enjoyed teaching and coaching. And I was the assistant coach. I was like the buffer zone to the head coach. So a lot of guys would come to me with issues, whatever that was, playing time or personal issues or whatever it landed up being, before it was ever addressed with the head coach. So I had a lot of, really deep conversations with these guys, which I really appreciated, which, I realized that's what I landed up loving the most about the job. Not so much the coaching of hockey, it's, per se, like the X's and O's, which, that was part of it. But I actually enjoyed helping these guys as human beings become better humans, and live better and sleep better, and ultimately hopefully perform better, which generally is a byproduct of feeling better. So that's kind of the world I'm in now, more so. And I just felt like I just loved coaching life more than I liked coaching hockey. But that was part of it, because obviously they're kind of interconnected. Guys got family issues, personal issues, home issues, substance abuse issues. That's going to translate on the ice. So it's no longer an X and O issue. It's like, well, this guy's not performing because he's got no energy. He's not sleeping because he's drinking. He's got all these issues, and he's not able to shelf some of his emotional trauma. So, yeah, I really did enjoy that piece of it. Just connecting with these guys on a personal level, and just listening. All these guys want is to be heard, and just to feel like they're a part of something, and the guys and the coaches and the organization itself actually cares. And I thought I did a good job at that, and because I'm a compassionate guy. I just enjoy that piece of it. So it was a natural fit for me.
Well, it seems like you're in a really good role right now doing that for everybody else also. Now, there was a very viral moment with the Flyers this past season with the Ivan Provorov issue. And as you said, behind the scenes, talking with the guys, you're getting all of these players that are being recruited for their talents. but there's that fine line of being socially involved with issues. How do you think, coming from that coach's aspect and that player's aspect, because you have been in both of those roles with the whole situation being handled, they tried to do it quietly. It got blown out of proportion with the media. Like, that was a huge, huge thing. And now Provorov is moved on to someplace else.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure he got moved because of his stance on that specific situation. Yeah, there were some other, internal things going on. I'm not sure he was overly happy the last couple of years with the organization and his situation. Maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back, but I honestly don't believe that was really a factor at all. I think he actually had his, Tortorella's support in it and the organizations. To the situation itself, I mean, I don't believe the league should be forcing players or mandating players to do anything, especially when it's really involving taking I would say a political position. I'm all about love. Trust me, I'm all about inclusion. I support it all. But once you start forcing people to take a stance on something, you put them in an uncomfortable position, and it's almost like as soon as you don't follow, the mandate, you're some sort of cancer, what I mean? It's like you don't love people and you don't care and you don't support. So I just think it's unfair to make guys do something, make guys wear a jersey. I'm all about like they did before. It was just like, if you want to support it, put some tape on your stick, go out there, support it. Everyone has the free will to support it however they want. But whether it's this issue or another, you pick a religion. If you told a guy to go, rock a, so-and-so religious jersey, you're going to have people that are going to resist it. So anytime you squeeze people into a certain way of thinking and and supporting something, or, having to wear something in support, you can support something without wearing something, right? You just put guys in a bad spot, and then all of a sudden they look like the bad guy. It generates a ton of media, people bashing on them. And I'm probably going to, hear a bunch of bullshit for, my position on this, but I know Provi, he and all these guys are not saying they don't support it or, support inclusion and don't love everybody. It's just like, there's a line now when you force someone to do something that's not in their maybe spiritual or religious beliefs. Doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel alignment. You shouldn't expect someone to do it. And and I think the NHL did a good job. They've already retracted it for next year. We're just not mandating these things. We can't force guys to have a political position, because that's essentially what it is. And to me, it's like it's not the time and place to have these political debates. Hockey is for everybody, sports is for everybody. We love everybody. It's all about inclusion, but I don't think we need to be, again, forcing guys to have a position that make you feel uncomfortable. But that being said, I don't think that any of that stuff was why he got moved. I think there was stuff way before that even happened. It was probably a year in the making, at least, if not two, that he probably should have been moved. So I think that was just another neat piece to the puzzle.
Well, just to clarify, they're still going to sell all the merchandise also. I mean, they're not going to stop selling the merchandise for the inclusion or anything. They're just going to stop requiring the players' commitment to doing all of that.
Yeah, which is fair. I think. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Once you start mandating something, it gets a little hairy, because it's not so cut and dry, and mandates can become scary. And we've seen this through COVID, and it squeezes people because everyone has a slightly different belief system, and we have to respect that too. And I think that's what the people on the one side would be like, well, you don't, right, because you have a position and you hold your line. That all of a sudden they immediately assume that you have no love and you're some sort of narcissist or whatever they want the term they want to throw in. They want to gaslight you, but you also got to respect people's positions too. on the other side, it's like, okay, like, it's just like let him be. Why we have to grill the guy, crucify the guy? And he wasn't the only one. Other guys around the league had done the same. And um, I respect people for standing up for what they believe in. And whether it's right or wrong. If that's what feels in alignment to their spiritual belief, then I mean, to me, you have to let them go. But once you start like harming people and there's violence and there's other things, well, then that's a different story. But I don't think just not rocking a jersey. I mean, the poor guy, it's like he can't even take warm-ups because he didn't wear it, and all of a sudden it's like to what you're saying, it turned into this big thing it shouldn't have. But it's I think everyone agrees in inclusion and love, and it's like love is love is love. And but once you start rocking certain flags and certain colors, and you're now taking some version of a whether it's a religious or political or spiritual stance, and some people just don't feel comfortable, and you just got to respect that. At least that's my opinion. Just respect people, as long as people aren't hurting people. Like let them be. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know there are some changes in the front office now, and I think I'm going to ask the question everybody wants to know, what's on their minds, and see what you think about Keith Jones and Danny Briere now being really involved with the Flyers. What do you think's going to go on?
Well, first of all, I love it. I love both of those guys. I think, you couldn't have two better guys at the helm. I played with Danny. He's a high-level pro on and off the ice. He's paid his dues in management, as assistant general manager, player development. He's worked his way up on the business side of things, the hockey operation side of things. So, and he's not too far removed. I would say he's like a perfect guy to replace the old guard as the head of the snake, if you will. And then, Jonesy. I know Jonesy, and he's been in the media for the last 15, 20 years. And I mean, talk about a guy that's beyond knowledgeable, and not just knowledgeable, he has the ability to communicate his knowledge and with precision, and with some wittiness. He's a funny guy, which not that matters when you're the president of a hockey team, but people respect him. It's okay to have some humility in these roles and show some the lighter side of yourself. But highly intelligent. He's seen all these guys the last how many years. He knows the players, not just the Flyers players, but the opponents. He knows what guys are available. He's talked to so many coaches, and he's asked all the hard questions about certain players' character. So as they build out this team in the next few years, I'd like to think they've got a pretty strong pulse on the guys they're bringing in. So they complement each other very well, and I think I think it's nice to see a new guard, a younger generation of guys leading the pack here, because lots has changed since the Broad Street Bullies, right? I mean, you're talking about winning Stanley Cups, drinking beer, where now you got a multi-million-dollar enterprise on just strength and conditioning and recovery, and the amount of data collection around the work versus the recovery, and making these guys finely tuned athletic specimens. And the mindset's changed. There is actually mindfulness in the game now. I think it was a little bit archaic back in the day. There's so many different resources around psychotherapy and mindfulness, and above and beyond the physical body and the physical skill of the game. It's I would say, people say it's like 80% mental, 90%. It's like it's 100% mental. So if you can fine tune the mind and fine tuned thinking and calming the nervous system, we're not so reactive. We can create a little more space. Guys ultimately become better athletes, better performers, and that's the world we're in. If you see the evolution, like from the Broad Street Bullies to now, and you somewhere along the lines, like you see where I played, like I'm looking at these guys and like I was a bad hockey player compared to these guys. You know what I mean? I'm like these guys are like highly skilled. I see like 14-year-old kids have way more skill than I ever had. Like the development is incredible, and the skill level is through the roof. it's exciting. But beyond that, the science support recovery, regeneration, and the restorative nature of the back end of work is highly impressive. So it really takes like an evolved mind, I guess, if you will, to understand this. It's long gone are the days where we're just going to squat and muscle our way through this. It's like, no, there's so much intelligence, and there's so much thoughtfulness and mindfulness in the back end of sport, which you don't see on the ice. Again, whether it's the strength and conditioning, and it's the recovery, it's the mindfulness, it's the things, the visualization, all these things that guys are doing. So you need younger minds. You need guys that have evolved with the transition of the game. And I think Jonesy, Danny B are perfect for it. And I think they're surrounding themselves with guys that complement their intelligence. John Leclerc, obviously, still played a little bit of an old school era, but a highly respected goal scorer, respected person. Patrick Sharp, I played with him. Is one at every level, and just a pro, and still that younger generation that's going to complement the evolution of the game. So I'm excited. This is the first time in I don't know how many years that I've really been excited about the direction of the Flyers and the season. Like, that being all this being said, there's going to be some growing pains for sure. I mean, you're kind of rebuilding an organization, and you're rebuilding a nucleus of a team, which takes time. But I don't think they're too far off to penetrate playoffs, and maybe 3-4 years to really making a push. If everything goes according to plan. Staying healthy is a huge piece of this. Obviously nailing your draft picks, where these guys become not just players, but elite players that they're actually slotting them for. But I'm excited for it. Yeah, I think both those guys are great, and the guys they're building around them, highly support it all.
You just spoke about the evolution of the sport, and not only the evolution of the sport itself, but the evolution of the assessment of the sport. You now are involved in a podcast called Nasty Knuckles, and you have the opportunity to get some of these players on there to sit down and talk with them and see what's going on, and have a different take than just the regular media would give you.
Yeah, we like to have fun with it. I mean, we're just trying to humanize the players, right? You could grill these guys all day long about all the shoulda, woulda, couldas, all the bad plays, asking about this and asking about that. We just want to learn about their lives and what they do for fun, and share a few funny stories, and just kick back and just be normal, right? I mean, we're not traditional media in the sense of like just asking those bizarre questions that you already know the answer to, or you're putting guys in bad spots trying to extract some sort of garbage out of them. We're not there to scrutinize anybody. I mean, in fact, probably to a fault. The last 3 years of the Flyers, it hasn't been great, and we're sitting there like, yeah, we could caca the team all day long, and caca this and hate on this, but what good is that? I think everyone knows that they weren't doing well. I mean, the last thing the guys need is just another media outlet, or another few guys ripping on them, and so it's too easy to just rip on people. I was in those positions. It's like, let's talk about the good, let's talk about your training, let's talk about your mindset, let's talk about some funny stories, some crazy things you've seen, experienced, some adversity you faced. I'm more concerned about that, because that's what, like, the essence of these guys it is. It's not what typically what the fans see. It's behind the scenes. It's their character, and the things they engage in, and the things they like, and how they got there, and all the battles they had along the way. Because it's most people just kind of see the tip of the iceberg, right? They see whatever's kind of creeping out of the water, and it's like there's all this foundational stuff, all this this core work that these guys have poured in, adversity, bumps in the road, that really what makes them. And I think people want to hear that, and obviously people want to hear them tell some funny stories too. And some stories can't be told, but we're trying to get to the stories that can be told, and have some fun with it. We're certainly not there to scrutinize anybody.
Well, then I want to hear a funny story out of you. What's your funniest story? Because I have a funny story about Keith Jones and John Runyon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure there's probably several Keith Jones. Geez, funny story with myself. I don't even know where to begin. Um, I've done a lot of stupid shit, that's for sure. I'm trying to think.
I
Let me
put you
think
on the
about that one.
spot with that one. So I guess I'll have to share my story because
Hmm.
Keith Jones used to do this thing called the Farm Olympics. His
Hmm.
wife, I guess, is a horse rider. And they used to have people come out to the house to do the Farm Olympics to clean the fields of all the
Hmm.
stuff. So we were doing at the Farm Olympics, and I was in Keith Jones's kitchen waiting to use the bathroom. And Keith Jones's kitchen has a little step down to go use the powder room. Well, John Runyon came out of the bathroom and he tripped on that step coming up. And he came at me literally, it was like slow motion. And I'm not a big person. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Being on the other side of that, I'm like, yeah, football's tough.
Oh
John Runyon's a
yeah.
big dude,
Oh yeah. He
but it
is.
was
That's funny.
it's fun like being in this area because as you said, so many times these guys are dehumanized in front of the media and everything. And I think that's a great thing that you guys are propping, getting people out there, knowing that these guys are human too, and they're going through a lot. And whether you see it on the ice or you know about it or, share those funny stories, do those funny things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important. It's easy for the media to just rip guys up, and a lot of fans have the attitude, well, they're getting paid a lot of money. Like they should be able to tough it out and suck it up. And I agree with that to some degree, right? I mean, if you're getting paid that kind of money, you should have some level of resilience. But the reality is these guys are human and they have feelings like you and I, and adversity is part of life, and stress is part of life, and shit happens off the field or off the ice, that guys have to deal with, and it affects their performance. Um, you know, so I'd like to think that hopefully we can cultivate a little bit of compassion for these guys. That being said, most people are like, well, you're getting paid $5 million, $6 million a year, tough it out. But I still got a soft spot in my heart for people that are struggling, right? I mean, it doesn't matter how many dollars you have in the bank if you don't have your mental health, and if you're not in alignment, you're not feeling well. The money is not going to buy you happiness. It's not going to buy you wellness. This is something that guys need to reel in, and this is it's not about money. It's just about having a little compassion for people's hardships and things people go through. So just trying to have some fun, just trying to keep it light, humanize the guys, and kind of keep the traditional media questions out of it.
Now, you've also moved on to other ventures outside of hockey. What have you been doing? Because I only got, like before we started this, I only had a little bit of knowledge, but now I know you're way bigger into other things.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, the grind of fighting really kind of squeezed me, on a physical level, emotional and spiritual level, where I found I wasn't in alignment with my soul's purpose, I guess, if you will. I think growing up, that was my dream. I'm not sure if it was my overall purpose. Just didn't feel fulfilled. Again, banged up, just inflammation, surgery after surgery, pain, substance abuse. You end up getting swallowed up into the rinsing away of the pain and suffering with alcohol and partying and everything like that. Just everything kind of came to a head, and I landed up getting in the world of alternative health, alternative wellness, and that's with the assistance of plant therapies as well as yoga, meditation. Really learning to lean on my own spine, but having some assistance along the way, that's sustainable. That's not traditional, pharmaceutical drugs. I've seen it enough and enslave enough people. I've seen enough people go down with oxy addictions and sleeping pill addictions, and alcohol addictions. I was just done with that world, and I wanted something better. I knew there was something better, and I had experience with cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms. I at least had a taste for them. I knew that there was something profound in them. I just didn't understand the science to support what I was feeling. So I transitioned to this world of healing with cannabis, healing with mushrooms. But the bigger thing here is like I really got a passion for what we call integration, but it's really mindfulness. It's just it's behavioral health. It's shifting the way we think and the way we behave, and inducing less stress and trauma on ourselves, so we don't have to make life so difficult. It's a lot of this is not adding, it's subtracting. A lot of things I was doing was creating more issues in my life and creating more mental health issues. Alcohol is a tough one, right? It's so socially acceptable, but it is a nervous system depressant. It does dehydrate the body and brain, right? And so it does really have a negative impact on mental health and physical health. And as athletes that are trying to recover, I really felt that. And I've seen so many guys go through substance abuse programs and whatnot with alcohol specifically. But you mix in an opioid painkiller here, and a muscle relaxer here, and a sleeping pill here. You got a concoction of darkness. So I wanted to break free of the shackles of those protocols, and say protocols in that way of healing and dealing with your shit, and realizing that I was an accountable guy. Being a fighter, you have to be accountable because you have to own it and you have to stand up and show up. And I took that philosophy and that mentality into my own life and my healing. And it was like, guess what? You got yourself in this jam. You dug yourself in this hole, and you're going to get yourself out of it. And you're going to use some plant medicines, some sacred earth medicines, and you're going to, beyond that, you're going to learn to lean on your own spine and learn how to take care of yourself and cultivate that happiness and that fulfillment you're lacking from within. And you're going to learn how to take care of your body. You're not going to just lift weights and be stiff and sore and inflamed. You're going to start lengthening the body. You're going to start learning about spine health, and you're going to start learning about breath and the present moment meditation. And it just kind of kept following me down these different runways that lands up kind of encompassing the world that I'm in. I got a few different business ventures in cannabis and psilocybin mushrooms, but I also do a lot of integration and mindfulness coaching, because to me that's where my heart's at. It's like you look at the mental health crisis in the world we're living in right now. The suicide rates through the roof. People are struggling. You got people with a ton of money. It shows you that money, you can't buy you happiness, that can't find themselves out of a wet paper bag. And but it's beyond all that. It's just that we've been so disconnected from reality, disconnected from nature, disconnected from ourselves, from our relationships. We're connected to our phones, but no roots left. We've lost our culture. We've lost our essence, of spiritual essence. You become spiritually bankrupt. So I just feel called to be of service in that regard and be a vehicle for speaking the truth, and helping people, however that looks, find their way. Right. I mean, just got back from Jamaica. We do retreats down in Jamaica with psilocybin mushrooms, and just the magic, and witness I would say miracles that we see. The intelligence of the mushrooms helps just shift perspective and helps people have a new profound appreciation for life, because I think we've lost that that love for life and want to live. Things have changed the last 3 years. A lot of darkness, a lot of question marks, a lot of confusion, but it all interfaces with the plant medicine stuff, right? It's trying to find better ways to deal with our physical pain, find better ways to flush our inflammation, better ways to deal with our mental health issues, anxiety, stress. And you go to yoga, and the essence of it is the present moment and meditation, right? It's like we get so caught up in the future and trying to control the world, and so caught up in the past, and our past experience are defining us and are defining our emotional state by living in resentment and anger, and kind of just reliving past experiences, and therefore taking away from the present moment. But it sounds granola, I understand that, but there's no other time but the present moment, and there's no anxiety and depression in the present moment. And that's where flow state happens. That's where creative flow happens, and that's where we are at our best, and that's where we are able to flow through life a little bit easier. And that's what we're trying to get back to. So the psychedelics help us get there. Cannabis can help us get there, but ultimately we need to help ourselves get there. We can't outsource everything. It always comes back to us. The kingdom of God lies within. It's like, the happiness, the peace, it's all within us. It's not outsourced. And I think I'm just extremely passionate about talking about it and sharing that with others, because I think people just, it's our civilization. It's like, it's society. We're like walking off a cliff. We've just abandoned the natural laws. And then we get into these reactive situations of healing. We get into these emergency crises, and then we have to go, for emergency surgery, or, we panic with our healing, and we do the wrong things. We engage in, maybe the wrong therapies because we get bullied into it, or we feel stressed into it. But there is a better way that we've been taught, and the way that the system is teaching us. And I'm just trying to be one of the million stewards of this, and just trying to bring awareness to some of these sacred plant medicines that have been sidelined and oppressed, and again, teaching the empowerment in this all. This all comes back to us. I've said it a few times now, but it's like we've done a good job at outsourcing everything. We need to go to this specialist and this specialist and this specialist, and it's like this nutritionist and this guy and this guy and this guy. It's like we already know the answers. We just got to like maybe sit back and meditate on some of these things and reflect, and just be a little bit more easeful and a little more gentle on our approach. We're so rigid, right? We're on our own worst enemy, self-talk, but that's the world I'm in. Mindfulness. I'm just all about teaching mindfulness. And then again, the business ventures, got a cannabis play, hemp play, psilocybin play, and they all interface with this work I'm doing, because again, you can have the best CBD products, the best cannabis-based products, but if you're not doing the work, and if you're not actively working on removing your own pain and flushing your own inflammation naturally through mindful movement and nutrition and all these things that get people well, you're gonna still continue to be dependent on these things, even though they're better than an Ambien or an opioid. Certainly there is a harm reduction value in those, drug diversion component to that, but I'm more interested in getting people to realize that they're their own medicine. Like, we are the medicine, and these are just tools. God just created these cool tools around us to help facilitate some of this healing, but we are the medicine.
You just opened a wonderful Pandora's box, though, and we are going to have you back on, because you fit right in with our little guest list that we've already had. So I'm excited for this, and we're going to talk more about what you've been doing with all of that in another podcast. But unfortunately, I have to let you go, because we've been here an hour already. So where can everybody find you on social media, though?
I'm on Instagram at Riley Cote 32. Same on Twitter, Riley Cote 32. I'm on LinkedIn, just at Riley Cote. I believe I still have a Facebook, not very active on it. I think it's just / Riley Cote. And then I have a personal website, rileycote.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, all of this will be linked in the body of the podcast themselves in the description, so people can just click on you and be able to find you real quick. So Riley, thank you so much. And I can't wait until our next podcast where we can really dive right into the other things too. So come back, please.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I'm Tatiana Ryan. This is the Businessy Podcast, and this was Riley Cote. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.